Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nourishing the Future, taking a systems approach at the 2021 Borlaug Dialogues. My name is Reverend Eugene Cho, and I serve as the president and CEO of Bread for the World, a grassroots Christian advocacy organization dedicated to changing policies, programs, and conditions that allow hunger to persist to reach our common goal of ending hunger. Now, this is the first time I have had the privilege and opportunity to be a part of the World Food Prize Borlaug Dialogues. It's an honor to join the distinguished event and do my part to contribute to the long partnership between the dialogues and Bread for the World. Now, on behalf of Bread for the World, the Alliance to End Hunger and 1,000 Days, thank you so much for coming to join this conversation about malnutrition and what we can do to address it. By next year, nearly 14 million more children are likely to be severely malnourished because of the COVID-19 pandemic's impacts. That means approximately 59 million young children will likely face life-threatening malnutrition if the global community doesn't act. Now, during this week, I know that we're absorbing so much information, and that's the reason why I want to share that statistic one more time. Approximately 59 million young children will likely face life-threatening malnutrition if the global community, you, I, us, if we do not act. Now, recovering from the pandemic and making progress on nutrition, it will take everyone. No one sector has all the tools or the knowledge or the capacity to be able to tackle a challenge of this scale alone. That's why we and our partners, we brought experts to share their perspective, the private sector, the public sector, farmers and foundations, researchers and policymakers. Again, the emphasis is that all of us need to play a significant role. The good news is that there is a lot of momentum right now. At last month's UN Food Systems Summit, the US government pledged to continue its investment in Feed the Future, the signature US Global Food Security Initiative, at a level of $1 billion annually for the next 5 years. And more than 300 governments made commitments at the summit. The US Senate and House have also both introduced legislation, the Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act of 2021, that will impact the nutrition of tens of millions of women and young children by authorizing USAID to advance targeted interventions to prevent and treat malnutrition around the world. One of the remarkable things in those two pieces of news is the breadth of involvement in a polarized and contentious political environment, further stressed by the ongoing pandemic. Global nutrition has emerged as a place for bipartisan cross-sectoral action. And for that, we should celebrate. This is where the world is coming together. Now, I know that our country and the world can make progress against extreme hunger and malnutrition. And to be honest, it's not just me. We know. And that's the reason why you've chosen to join us for these dialogues. I know because we've done it before. The pandemic has set us back and erased some of the progress made, but we can recoup what has been lost and actually do more. There are 3 opportunities in front of us right now. The Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act, currently in Congress, 1. 2, December's Nutrition for Growth pledging moment, and 3rd, a new proposal called Nourish the Future. You will hear about all of those in the discussions to come, so I will leave you with this. In these challenging times, nothing could be more good, compassionate, and just than to work for a world that has no hunger or malnutrition. Children who get proper nutrition before their second birthday are 10 times more likely to survive life-threatening childhood diseases. They are more likely to have healthier families and thus break the generational cycle of malnutrition and contribute to human flourishing across the globe. Thank you for what you are doing to make that aspiration, a world without hunger or malnutrition, more into reality. I sincerely hope you will engage with the conversations of today's events by asking questions, making comments, bringing others into the conversation, even on social media or in your workplaces. This is an essential conversation, and we can't get to the end of hunger alone. So friends, with that in mind, it is now my pleasure to introduce you to the moderator for our first panel, Eric Mitchell, Executive Director of the Alliance to End Hunger. The Alliance to End Hunger is a coalition of diverse institutions that work together to build the public and political will to end hunger at home and abroad. Eric is a leader in the anti-hunger community and on Capitol Hill with more than 20 years of nonprofit, corporate, and government experience. Eric, over to you.
Thank you, Reverend Cho, for such warm introduction, and thank you also for just giving us a sense of urgency and call to action on why it's important that we are here today and why we need to really advocate on addressing hunger and malnutrition around the world. I'm very excited about the group that we'll be speaking with today. We have three experts who are going to really talk about what support of nutrition looks like from a local perspective and from the perspective of a smallholder farmer, as well as from the perspective of from the private sector. And so I'm going to introduce our three guests today. Samson Kanai, who is the Regional Sustainable Development Manager for Corteva. He covers Africa and the Middle East. Brenda Wakeza is with the 1 Acre Fund, where she's the Nutrition and Health Program Manager. And Gladys Mugambi, who is the Scaling Up Nutrition Government Focal Point and Head of Nutrition for Kenya. Our three panelists also have something in common, that they're both, all three are coming to us from Kenya. So I know it's a very late evening for them. So I want to thank them for joining us this evening from their perspective. The way we're going to operate is this is going to be a fireside chat. We will start off with a question for that all of y'all will answer, followed by specific questions to each panelist. And then we'll do a closing question again for all of y'all to answer. So we'll just jump in. I'll start with the first question, essentially is, what role do you see smallholder farmers playing in improving nutrition through food systems? Samson, do you want to be the first to answer that question?
Yeah, I'm happy to start. Thank you, Eric, and glad to be part of this session this evening. Yeah, so here in Africa, I think smallholder farmers play a very important role. And even looking at the population, 60% of the African population are smallholder farmers. And they also account for about 80% of all food consumed, production of all food consumed here in Africa and in Asia. So at Corteva, we work with millions of smallholder farmers globally. These farmers produce the key staples, which are critical part of nutrition and food, important components of food consumed in these regions. So for us, addressing nutrition starts with the seed, and by providing quality hybrid seeds, crop protection solutions, as well as agronomy support in sustainable farming practices, we are able to support smallholder farmers not only meet the food security needs for these regions, but also meet the nutritional requirements. A case in point is Ethiopia, where you look at the key staple there being teff, which accounts for about 2/3 of the total protein intake. And there we are supporting about 800,000 farmers produce teff sustainably.
Thank you. Brenda, you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I think that's a great question, because we really depend on smallholder farmers, especially in developing countries. Both urban and rural populations depend all their food and nutrient needs on smallholder farmers. And therefore, they really contribute to food and nutrition security in various ways. For example, when there's increased smallholder agricultural production, it means more food enters the marketplace, which leads to lower food prices and even better diets for the general population. So they also help in terms of when there is economic growth from agriculture, it helps to improve more access to healthcare, education, either at the household level or national level, leading to better nutrition and health status of the population. So smallholder farmers really do a lot to provide for us enough foods and nutrients that we need in all kinds of populations and all groups of people.
Thank you much. And Gladys?
Yes, thank you for the question. And as the other colleagues have said, it's important that we look at the whole food chain to ensure that from the seed up to the table, what happens in the middle, we are able to ensure that the food is safe, it is nutritious, and it can be available all the time so that people are well fed. So those are the issues that every government is supposed to be concerned about, so that we can be able to feed our people with food that is nutritious, and also taking care of the farmers who are the people producing the food.
Did we lose Gladys? All right, I'll wait for her to come back. In the meantime, Samson, I'm going to ask you a specific question as it relates to Corteva. As an agri-science company, how does Corteva fit in the nutrition conversation?
Yeah, thank you, Eric. That's a great question. A lot of people do not think of Corteva when it comes to dairy industry. The truth is we are working with smallholder farmers to support them in improving the quality of dairy feeds. Here in Kenya, we are partnering with Land O'Lakes, Forage Genetics, and International Livestock Research Institute to support women smallholder farmers address the chronic shortage of dairy products in Kenya. And if you come to think of it, Kenya can be termed as a net importer of dairy products with a shortfall of about 1.2 billion liters of milk annually. With that in mind, if you look on the other hand, the role that quality feeds play in meeting that chronic shortage, about 60 to 70% of the cost of producing milk is attributed to the cost of feeds. So we have seen an opportunity where we can be able to support this gap. And what we are doing through this alliance is, number one, provide quality corn silage seeds to the smallholder farmers. On top of that, we are providing agronomy support to the farmers on how to produce corn silage sustainably, as well as harvesting and storage of the same. So with all this work, we hope to support smallholder farmers, increase their productivity and incomes, as well as address the chronic shortage of dairy products in the country.
Thank you. And I think Gladys is still out. So I will turn it over to Brenda. Oh, Gladys, you're there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Sorry for the power that went off.
No, I understand. Do you want to finish your statement, or do you?
Yeah, I was saying that as we look at the food that we require as countries, we need to ensure that we take care of the food from the farm to the table. And therefore, we need to ensure that we bring together the various actors, and then we support them to be able to do what they're supposed to do. That is in packaging, labeling, and storing the food properly so that it can reach the people who will require it most. So that is what I wanted to say before my power went off, and sorry for that.
No problem. While I still have you, let me let you keep the floor and have a question specifically for you. One of our main messages today and of the scaling up nutrition movement is that we need everyone to come together to truly address malnutrition. That includes the private sector, NGOs, and the government. From your perspective, what is an example of something that the Kenyan government is doing to improve nutrition in its food and agriculture sector?
First of all, as a country, we came up with a policy that touches on all that we need to do and to ensure that we have enough food and it's safe and nutritious and it's able to reach the people. So we have a policy, and then scaling up nutrition, what we've done is to bring various actors together by forming networks. And we have the business network, which was formed recently, about 2 years now. And the business network brings together all those in business and who are doing various things in order to ensure that the food is okay and it's reaching the people. And we came up with a strategy so that we can ensure that we reach everyone who is supposed to be a part of that team. We also formed the SUN CSA network, Civil Society Alliance, whereby we bring together the various NGOs to provide technical support and also financial support to all those who require in business and also in government. Then we bring the various government ministries together, and we call that the government network. And we have agriculture, education, industrialization, water, and all those ministries that have a role to play in food security. So we also sit together and we develop policies together. We develop guidelines and strategies. And we've been able to do that with the Ministry of Education, with agriculture, with industrialization, and with Ministry of Health. So then we also have the academia network that provides technical support, research on various aspects that may be required by either business or government. And these networks are there so that we can be able to mobilize resources.
Well, I think she may have lost power again. Brenda, I'll go to you with a question. In working directly with smallholder farmers, 1 Acre Fund, as the 1 Acre Fund, you have a firsthand view of what farmers are growing. How do you see smallholder farmers contributing to improving nutrition? And how does the 1 Acre Fund work with farmers toward this goal?
Yeah, working in Oneka Fund, I realized that most of the smallholder farmers are women. For example, in our Kenya program, 64% of our clients are women. So when you help them produce diverse nutrient-rich foods, we ensure that children who are most at risk of malnutrition consume these foods, because women are also in charge of food preparation. So, but looking at the bigger picture, in all the regions we are operating in, we see that all populations generally rely on these smallholder farmers to satisfy all their food and nutrient needs. However, they face numerous challenges, which make it very difficult for them to produce these foods and also consume them. And this leads to them also being chronically food insecure and also undernourished, and yet they're the ones who produce all this food. So these challenges, for example, in terms of production are like low yields due to maybe reliance on rain-fed agriculture, high cost of farm inputs, low access to credits, lack of post-harvest processing and storage facilities, which push them to sell their product almost immediately after they harvest, and when the prices are very low, therefore losing their market share, among other challenges. Therefore, in Oneka Fund, we support farmers in production by providing access to high quality seeds and inputs, other inputs on credit, for example, for a range of nutritious crops, staple crops, legumes, fruits, vegetables, and even poultry. So across all the different food groups. And then we also do intensive farmer training on cultivation of the crops and storage, and also market facilitation for them to get good returns. So also in terms of consumption, we know that just consumption of diverse foods is not a given, even if they're available. There are many other barriers to consumption of nutritious foods. This is the reason why our farmers are still the ones who are chronically food insecure and malnourished. So, for example, there are social norms, there are culture around that affect food consumption, and therefore we support them by empowering households to make the best possible nutrition decisions through social behavior change initiatives, promoting the consumption of diverse diets, especially for pregnant women and young children, and especially just for all population generally. So yeah, that's in a snapshot what we do in Oneka Fund to support farmers. Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Brenda. Gladys, do we have you back? There you go.
Yes, sorry once again.
No worries.
Yes, so I was saying that we work through the networks, the Scaling Up Nutrition networks, and we support various government ministries, and we work with partners that have expertise in various areas to support either the farmers or those who are doing packaging. So we are in the process of ensuring that we have technical support being provided, and also financial support where required, so that we can be able to achieve our goals that we have put in our various strategies across the ministries. And we also have the UN network and donor network that are supporting to ensure that we have resources, both financially and technically, to be able to implement various programs. And some of them I've had Brenda describing on what they are able to do. Thank you.
Thank you. And Samson, I'm going to go back to you, just kind of piggyback on what both Gladys and Brenda were saying. I know you can't speak on behalf of all the private sector, but just from the lens that you work in, like what role, how does the private sector, or how can the private sector better fit into some of the different initiatives and programs that governments are doing, as well as groups like the 1 Acre Fund are doing on the ground, just from your perspective and expertise?
Thank you, Eric. I think private sector companies such as ourselves have an important role to play in addressing or ensuring access to nutrition for the populations. And as you mentioned at the beginning of this session, I think it was the speaker who introduced to the session, no single entity has the solutions to the challenges that we face in addressing nutrition. So companies like us, in partnering with organizations such as One Acre Fund, government entities, I think we have a lot of value to add in terms of technology and innovations. And just to give one example, if you look at African region, one of the biggest challenges smallholder farmers are facing is the changing reality of climate. And companies like us have an important role to play in addressing that by providing solutions such as drought-resistant seeds, which will enable farmers to continue producing food to nourish the populations in the various regions.
Thank you much. And so for our last question, this will be something for each of you to answer. And we can start with Gladys, if that works. But the question is, part of the solution that is being discussed today is the need of scaling up the production of diverse, nutritious food, including the production of more biofortified and drought-resistant crops. This is similar to what Samson mentioned earlier. Can you talk more about why that's important? I think, Brenda, we'll start with you on that question, then we'll go to Gladys.
Sure, Eric. So majority of our farmers, just being firsthand in the field, we find that they only consume foods that they produce, and which is mostly lacking in key nutrients for good nutrition and health. That's why we find that there is a high prevalence of micronutrient deficiencies among them. And therefore, production of biofortified crops help us to meet them at the point of need, and also just according to the food that they produce themselves. Because sometimes it's quite a challenge trying to get farmers to adopt a new crop, which has all these baby micronutrients that you need them to consume. But if you provide biofortified varieties of what they already produce, this is key to ensuring that they consume these nutrients to reduce the micronutrient deficiencies. And then we found that, for example, production of maize is very common in East Africa. So if we target such a crop, it's very easy to reach a high number of farmers or vulnerable people that need this micronutrients. So biofortification is really a key component in agriculture that can help us in alleviating micronutrient deficiencies.
Thank you, Brenda. Gladys.
Yes, thank you again. And when we talk about biofortification, it's one of the ways that we would like to use as an approach for dealing with micronutrient deficiencies and also providing the other nutrients, then energy, to the public. So biofortification, if we are able to increase the nutrients in potatoes, in maize, in beans, it will be one of the ways of trying to deal with two problems. That's micronutrient deficiency, and also issues of food security will be dealt with through a simple approach, so that we don't have to use a very expensive approach to manage malnutrition. So that is one of the ways that we are promoting, so that we reduce the many problems that the people face due to micronutrient deficiencies. Thank you.
Thank you. And Samson, we'll talk more about the role that biofortification can play.
Yeah, definitely biofortification provides a good opportunity in addressing nutritional deficiencies and in overall addressing the hidden hunger, especially in developing countries. Having said that, as Corteva, currently we don't have biofortified products in form of seeds, but we continue to work with partners within the CGAIR Global Research Network to enhance access to fortified foods. We see the bigger opportunity being around providing seeds and solutions to help farmers, seeds and seeds that are mostly drought resistant and that can sort of survive the kind of realities we are facing with the climate change, to help our farmers continue producing food to meet the needs of the global populations.
Thank you so much. And before we close, I just want to give our three experts an opportunity if they have any closing thoughts or comments that they would like for the audience to leave with. Brenda?
Yeah, probably I'll just have one statement that we should all remember that smallholder farmers are the basis of food production. And therefore, it's extremely important to invest in them in order to increase access to nutritious foods and also consumption of these foods for better diets and for better nutrition and health status of the whole population. Thank you.
Thank you. Hearing none, I will see if there's any questions from the audience. We have a few more minutes, so we have time maybe to take a few more questions. What special actions or measures did the panelists undertake to address consequences of the COVID-19 crisis? That's one of the questions from the audience. Maybe Gladys, do you want to tackle that question first?
Yes, we've noted that COVID-19 is affecting many people, including farmers. And therefore, as we communicate or advise people on prevention measures, we need to also ensure that our farmers are taken care of. But more to that, we need to start thinking and planning about taking care of the vulnerable during this pandemic, so that we do not lose some of the people that are going to help us to continue improving our diets through farming. And also it's good to note that this is the time to take nutrition also as one of the key interventions in ensuring that our people survive and continue to lead healthy lives despite the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda and Samson, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yes, if I could go first. Definitely the COVID crisis has had an impact on the food systems across the world. And especially here in Africa, if you look at the situation, we are seeing more people being exposed to food insecurity, and definitely being exposed to what I would call micronutrient insecurity as well. That calls for a coordinated approach in terms of different partners from different approaches working together to be able to sort of find solutions to accelerate the challenge that's ahead of us in terms of feeding the global population in light of crises such as the COVID.
Thank you. Brenda?
Yeah, I think I'll just give a short answer to that, because probably our time is much spent. So for NECA Fund, we do deliver inputs directly to farmers at where special stations which are just near their homes. So during the pandemic, when most of the world was closed down, So we were delivering all the inputs, the farm inputs to farmers, making sure that this is done even before many of the lockdowns are done. Then we also did some social behavior change campaigns on, water hygiene and sanitation, and also we just did more on providing credit facilities to farmers during this time because they're not able to purchase directly all the farm inputs that they require so that they may be able to produce more foods.
Thank you. And we have one last question. And this is probably to Gladys. What key strategies are African governments, in this case Kenya, doing to have to encourage the youth to invest and engage in agricultural activities and food production? Are there any programs or initiatives that you all are leading in that effort?
Yes, we have a strategy that we developed with the Ministry of Education, because if we have to involve youth, we need to start from schools so that they can continue when they go to college. So we would like to continue training our children to be able to grow foods even at the school as they learn. And we are reintroducing what we used to call 4K clubs, whereby young children are engaged in farming and also learning on how to deal with business using the foods that they grow. So that is one of the ways of doing it. And we want to promote kitchen gardens, and we can involve youth in that. And we want to have kitchen gardens all over the country. And the Ministry of Agriculture has a plan to use youth or work with youth in that program.
Thank you, thank you. And I want to thank all three of our panelists for, again, providing their expertise in this fireside chat, especially such late in the evening. And I want to also thank Bread for the World for organizing this event, and 1000 Days for partnering with us as well. And now we'll turn it over to Blythe, who will lead our second discussion. Blythe?
Thank you. Hello. Thank you so much, Eric. Thanks, of course, to our colleagues at Bread for the World. And thanks to Samson, Brenda, and Gladys. Welcome, everyone. I'm Blythe Thomas. I'm the Initiative Director of 1000 Days, an initiative of FHI Solutions, and we're part of an international nonprofit with a long-standing and proven track record of improving global nutrition through innovative and evidence-based and scalable approaches. I'd like to ask my panelists to go ahead and turn your cameras on. And I'll have you keep them on the whole time, all four of us, just because sometimes you may interact with each other, and I'll watch for cues from your smiling faces for that. We will have three joining me today. The first is Kathy Spahn, President and CEO of Helen Keller International, a global health organization dedicated to eliminating preventable vision loss, malnutrition, and diseases of poverty. We also have Dr. Cecilia Gamboa from the Ministry of Health in Costa Rica at the Department of Strategic Planning, Evaluation, and Health Policies as coordinator of the Secretariat of National Policy for Food and Nutrition. Joining us soon will be Dr. Jim Barnhart, Assistant to the Administrator, USAID's Bureau for Resilience and Food Security, as well as the Deputy Coordinator for Development for Feed the Future. Jim is actually in Iowa, running between meetings, so he will be joining us when he can, and we will work him into the dialogue. Kathy, I'd love to start with you. Helen Keller International is an implementing org. You're delivering services and support to combat nutrition insecurity. Close to 70% of people in developing countries live in rural areas, and most of them depend on agriculture as the food source. What solutions can help communities improve food security sustainably and make food systems more nutritious?
Well, and as you've recognized, of course, the issue goes beyond food security. It has to encompass good nutrition, because good nutrition is foundational to everything we want to achieve in development. So any solutions in rural farming and agriculture have to focus as much on nutritional outcomes as on agricultural yields. But before talking about what kind of model can work, I think we all need to acknowledge a reality that perhaps has crept up on some of us in the development sector. which is that most people don't want to live off the farm. They don't want to eat solely what they produce. More and more, what we're seeing in rural areas is that people are buying food with money from farming, with money from other endeavors, and it's only getting more so. At the same time, though, we have clear evidence that healthy food is up to 4 times more expensive than low nutrition, fill your belly kind of food. So we've got a situation where people are increasingly buying rather than producing the food that they eat, yet they don't have enough purchasing power to buy the nutritious food. So it's leading to poor diets and poor nutrition. The good news is there is a lot that we can do. At Helen Keller, we've been working for many years on the production side. So on a smaller, very localized level, helping households produce a diverse mix of nutrient-rich vegetables and fruits, as well as to raise small animals, particularly poultry. We're working to incorporate regenerative agriculture techniques, encouraging native plants, keeping insect, plant, bird, and mammal populations in balance, building soil health, and minimizing the need for chemical inputs, which first of all are costly, but they also have collateral damage. They kill valuable insects like bees and butterflies, which pollinate and help plants and fruits reproduce. So we know that this kind of work yields results. But these household farms need access to strong agricultural extension services to ensure that farmers are reached with the latest developments in agriculture, such as more drought-resistant and pest-resistant varieties of staples of horticultural crops. As we heard from the last 3 panelists, there have also been tremendous advances in biofortified crops. Thanks to Harvest Plus and others, there are so many staple crops that you can now farm that provide vitamin A, provide zinc, provide iron. And these nutritious crops are climate smart. They're bred for resistance to heat and to drought. So these are the kind of crops that need to be grown. Increasingly at Helen Keller International, we're extending our work beyond production to encompass the full cycle of the food system. So taking the whole system approach, including distribution, processing, and marketing of food. So that includes support for food storage, such as small-scale technologies to increase the shelf life of perishable fruits and vegetables. It includes new technologies for post-harvest processing to improve the market value of the food so the families raise more money because they're spending that money on buying food. A key challenge, as I see it, is to find that right balance between a no transformation food system, which is kind of what there was in the past, little value add for farmers, little availability of foods beyond the traditional staple crops, and a really high rate of food wastage. And then balancing that with an over-transformation food system, such as, dare I say, the one we have here in the United States, where a lot of nutritional value is lost in lots and lots of food processing, and where there's a lot of packaging, fancy packaging, transportation costs, energy consumption, that, to put it politely, are not good for the environment. So in our view, the just right food system is somewhere in the middle. It has light processing, light packaging, so it can extend nutritional value and shelf life, as well as marketability. And it's very local in nature, with most people eating food that was produced in the region where they live. Right now, we seem to have one or the other extreme, but I think as our programs and those of many other INGOs working in this nexus of agriculture and nutrition have shown, is there is a way communities can produce healthy foods that are profitable to the producers, but that are still affordable to the bottom of the pyramid consumers.
Wow, Kathy, thank you. You know, I'm here in the United States with you as well, and I like to tell my children, let's try to eat close to the ground, right? We talk about the issue of overly processed foods. I also appreciated you were sharing about you know, native plants and soil health, climate smart crops. I was fortunate to work at the Nature Conservancy, and I've really enjoyed understanding the connectivity between climate health, planet health, and people health, and the level of the importance of nutrition in our food. So that resonates with me on a couple of different levels. So thank you. Cecilia, I'd like to come to you next, please, and just ask you a few questions as well. So you're joining us from Costa Rica, a country that can teach us a great deal about the importance of nutrition in our food systems. Could you tell us a little bit about Costa Rica's malnutrition journey and why Costa Rica chose to become a sun country?
Yes, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everybody. Costa Rica has enjoyed great political stability for several decades. Since 1970s, investments have been made in primary healthcare programs, in social and educational programs that help Costa Rica to reduce the indicators of child malnutrition. In addition, for 70 years, there has been a comprehensive nutrition and care program that cares for children in poverty or in social risk from birth to 6 years of age. And when they enter school, it continues to give them comprehensive care so that their mothers can keep working. Currently, wasting malnutrition in children under 5 years of age is 1%, and stunting malnutrition is 5.6% at national level. This program contributes to improving the nutritional status of the maternal and child population and the adequate development of children living in poverty and or in social risk, the opportunity to remain in quality daily care services. The food and nutrition program for students of the Ministry of Education also offers complementary food to the students' population for primary and high school. It promotes healthy eating habits, hygiene habits, and proper behaviors around daily eating. We also have a strong food fortification program that has contributed to reducing the problems of malnutrition due to the micronutrient deficiencies. All these programs over the years have contributed to the fact that child malnutrition is not anymore a public health problem at the national level. Of course, we still have stunting and wasting malnutrition in coastal areas and in vulnerable population. Right now, our serious nutritional problem is overweight and obesity in all groups of age, including young children. Costa Rica joined the SUN movement in order to seek support to strengthen nutrition governance. The exchange of country experience has been a great learning opportunity. It has been important to position the nutrition of Costa Rica in the international arena and the possibilities of having technical assistance that the SUN movement offers, for example, to identify indicators and methodology for monitoring and evaluating the actions carried out in nutrition that has been of great benefit. It was important also to create a multi-stakeholder platform to strengthen actions and intervention in nutrition and those that are nutrition sensitive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I hope you saw my clapping. It's just so exciting, heartwarming, hopeful to see the work that you have done, others have done. Jim has arrived. I asked him to turn on his camera as well to be part of this, but Cecilia, just maybe one more question for you. I did want to acknowledge, I feel like you shared with us a little bit too about what were some of the strategies that you took. One more question for you. How can governments and organizations best support SUN countries in their nutrition and food systems work?
Well, yes. I wanted to say that the governments and the organizations can best support the countries for food nutrition, that they can help by allocating more budget to nutrition interventions and projects, because despite the achievements that have been made, resources for nutrition are actually very scarce. Specific legislation and regulations must be established so that the majority of the population has access to healthy food. And the other people that before me, they say that healthy food is really much more expensive. A mechanism must be found for private food industry to collaborate with the government's objective to produce healthier food that help reduce malnutrition problems. Also, it's important also to improve nutritional surveillance and information systems for better decision making. I will say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I hear you echoing what I've heard also from some of our colleagues in Kenya, talking about access to healthy food, some of the challenges with pricing. I see that Jim has temporarily turned off his camera, but I was about to ask if I could follow up with him as you were talking a little bit about government, and I was thinking through. Hi there. If you could take yourself off mute.
Hi guys, and apologies for tardiness. I'm in Des Moines at the moment at the World Food Prize event, and it's been a rather bizarre situation to be doing in person, hybrid, virtual, and having to get from the center to my hotel room for this really important event. I'm thrilled to be able to join you though. So
Well,
thank you.
We're happy to have you, and thank you. I know what that feels like to be running between meetings and trying to, make sure you grab a glass of water. So thank you so much for being with us. So yeah, I'd love to jump into USAID, your work to prioritize nutrition through food systems. Jim, we were speaking earlier this week about how nutrition plays a pivotal role in a variety of contexts, but historically, nutrition programming has felt siloed. And I wanted to hear a little bit about how USAID has worked to break silos and advance the nutrition goals through multi-sectoral programming. We've talked a lot about the importance of multi-sectoral work today. So this is hopefully a chance to hear a little more from you as well.
Great. Look, I in my remarks I was making in the last event for the CGIAR's 50th anniversary, we talked about this idea of breaking down silos. Look, over the past decade, Feed the Future, which is the U.S. government's whole of U.S. government effort to end poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. We've built a strong evidence base and a proven record on achieving agricultural transformation that benefits smallholder farmers and communities. And then for the past several years, we have been increasingly bringing nutrition to the forefront of these efforts. But we've seen from the data that the global food system is failing many infants and young children and pregnant women and who have the greatest needs for nutritious foods. Most recent figures that I've seen, 3 billion people in 2020 couldn't afford a healthy diet. And that's expected to increase. And 82% of young children in low and middle income countries haven't received adequate diets. That's 4 in 5 of every children around the globe. I mean, if that's not a call to action, I don't know what is. So poor diets and malnutrition are not only robbing kids of basic well-being, they're undercutting the educational and earning potential, and they're depriving children of a healthy life, which is truly a basic human right. So good nutrition is imperative for us in our Feed the Future objectives. And despite the challenges that we faced, I am confident that we're well positioned to rise to the challenge. I don't know if the audience noticed, but last month at the UN General Assembly, President Biden announced a $10 billion multi-year investment to promote food systems transformation at home, in the US, and abroad. And in abroad, for the work that we're doing outside of the US, that is a $5 billion commitment to our Feed the Future programming. So to support this commitment, USAID also announced a $25 million award with an additional $15 million in potential funding for the Tufts University. And they're going to be leading our Feed the Future Innovation Lab for food systems focused on nutrition. The new lab is going to build off 10 years of Tufts leadership on Feed the Future Innovation Lab for nutrition that it's been doing, and has informed food systems transformation that promote improved nutrition, particularly for women and children. And our FTF, Feed the Future Innovation Labs, are a great example of US ingenuity and academic partnerships. So in addition to our Feed the Future Innovation Labs, we also will be launching very soon our global food security strategy that's going to significantly reduce poverty and stunting. It's a focus of that. As you'll see tomorrow, the updated strategy will elevate new priority areas, including equity and inclusion, addressing climate change, COVID, and then integrating nutrition across the broader food system. So how do we do that? I mean, how do we think about taking nutrition out of the subject of global health? Global health for many years in our world particularly has owned nutrition, right? And so we as an agency have done what we can to start breaking out of that. And so, for instance, we have a Nutrition Leadership Council within USAID that brings together the expertise of our health partners within our health colleagues within USAID, our humanitarian assistance folks who work with Food for Peace and the World Food Program in areas of great crisis, and then our Bureau for Resilience and Food Security. So we house the Leadership Council, but it pulls together that expertise and experience from across the agency with this very idea that if we're going to take nutrition as a center pillar for the types of work that we're doing, it needs to be integrated across everything we do. We need to think about, we don't need to think about feeding people, we need to think about nourishing people, right? And so that's how we're getting at it institutionally. I think we're going to have to be very creative as we look at climate change, as we look at equity and inclusion, as we look at emerging from a post-COVID pandemic, on making sure that in everything we do, we incorporate a nutrition as one of those fundamental pieces that help drive programming, right? And look at the results and start holding both ourselves and our partners in our partner countries accountable for making sure that nutrition is incorporated across the board. And that's hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to just throw that out there and go, yep, that's what we're going to do and expect that to be easy, because we operate very efficiently when we focus, and we tell everybody focus, but what that ends up happening often is people then drill down into the area that they know, whether that be let's just take an example of finance, right? And you're looking at microfinance or that, right? Those folks do their microfinance. You start talking about nutrition, they go, well, that's those health people's thing. They do nutrition.
And
We're
right.
We're promoting business. We want to, but it's like, no. We need you to think through, what are the kinds of businesses that you're working with?
Right.
What's the gender dynamic on that? Because we know that there's a nutrition gender nexus that we want to seize upon. We need you guys, you are our experts on finance, to think through this with a nutrition lens.
Right.
So you're pushing people outside of their comfort zones, and that's not easy. And so I want to recognize that it's easy for me to just talk about it, but in actual implementation, we have to all of us have to, on this call and in the field, have to hold each other accountable for it. And it also means the nutrition. I'm sorry, one more point, and then I promise I'll stop. I know I was late, so I've got a lot of energy having run from my one place to the other. But the nutrition folks who've been doing this for many years, right, need also to open their aperture. They need to think through how do they intersect with education? How do they intersect with microfinance? How do they intersect with climate change? So that it's not just everyone recognizing nutrition as part of their work, but it's also nutrition trying to then push that envelope around throughout both within my own agency, but also then around across implementing partners and host country partners around the world. So let me just stop there.
I think there's lots of that thinking happening. A lot of nutrition folks. Right. A lot of nutrition folks are looking at the nexus of nutrition and climate change, nutrition and education, nutrition and reproductive health, you name it. So I think we're there.
We talk about that a lot. We talk about it in 1,000 Days, trying to understand the value of nutrition as a vertical and a horizontal, right? That nutrition cuts through all these. Kathy, you said good nutrition is essential to health and foundational to development. And that's exactly right. And, I think I appreciate too, Jim, how you're talking about the role of the Nutrition Leadership Council. That is one of the ways to get at this, is to bring together leaders from the different sectors and really sit in a room and start to see each other's viewpoints and find ways, that intersectionality. And so I think USAID, I've seen do that, really continue to do that well, especially over the last little while. And Kathy, to your point, spending time on with Nutrition Leadership Council and others that we have going on, it's been a real important journey. I think another piece for us that's been so critical is really making sure that we're talking about nutritious food systems. I've heard a lot about that today too, that not to let nutrition become a health thing, but that nutrition is central to food systems and health systems. And especially this year of action, as we're working toward the Nutrition for Growth Summit coming up in December, I think it's critical. Well, it's 4:30 or 4:30 my time, and I'm at pretty much the stopping point, although no one has put the hook out for me. But I do want to just sort of end before I introduce the next piece with, I don't normally ask closed-end questions, but I sort of feel like time insists on that. So I want to ask each of you to share with me if you're feeling hopeful from where you sit and the work you do and the colleagues you're working with. Are you feeling hopeful about the way forward and our future? And perhaps I can see first if I can start with you, Cecilia. Are you feeling hopeful?
Well, I am hopeful that we can continue to make progress on transforming food systems to be healthier, more affordable, and more sustainable. Despite the budget constraints, I believe that there is increasing awareness at the national and global level of the importance of nutrition to improve health and tackle non-communicable diseases. I believe that the National Dialogues for the Food System Summit provided us with many inputs to strengthen systems and work more collaboratively and building national and international coalitions. Of course, we need political support, and it's necessary to give continuity to the commitments acquired in the government, regardless of the change of government. Also, it's important to allocate more human resources and to increase the institutional budgets and nutritional issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim, I'll have you go next. Are you feeling hopeful?
I am, because we're seeing some success in the field. Let me just share you a quick, I'll try to be super fast on this, but let me just tell you the story from Bangladesh. We've got one of the folks that we worked with, Monica Rani Ghosh, attended one of our trainings, and it was a management training, right? It was business training, right? But she went there, she learned some new practices. She took those learnings home and she doubled her milk production. She's in dairy, right? With that increase of production and income, Monica was able to set aside more milk for her family, i.e. more nutrient-dense nutrition for her family, her kids particularly. And then her success went beyond that. With more women farming and producing in Bangladesh, we're seeing local markets are growing and they're serving more people. Businesses are responding to local needs, and the agriculture-led growth is now becoming self-reinforcing and resilient. And so we're seeing these growing economies serving people all across the region and the strengthening food security and nutritional outcomes. And so go back to what we were saying before, right? This was business training that had nutritional outcomes. And that's what we just have to start thinking that way. We all across the board. And so, yes, I am hopeful. It's going to be a lot of work. Post-COVID, we are behind where we need to be, and the challenge is great. But look, we're in this business because we believe in it, right? Whenever I talk to my State Department colleagues, I tell them I'm in the hope business, you're in the reality business. So, I'm going to continue to push because I believe in what we're doing, and I think we're making the right. Thus far, we're making good investment decisions, and I see transformation ahead that's going in the right direction. So let me stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, Jim. I love that you are in the hope business, and I think your example was spot on. Especially, we were hearing earlier on the panel about how so many farmers only are able to eat what they are growing, and the challenges with that from a nutrition perspective. And so, your example of the farmer, the milk producer who was able to provide more nutrients for her family was spot on. Kathy, are you hopeful?
I am hopeful, but I'm going to say to Jim, you're going to be the person, the department, the agency that translates that hope into reality. So don't sell yourself short on that. I think we've got a great opportunity ahead of us now. I think there's tremendous momentum. I think Eugene Cho framed it really well in the beginning when he talked about President Biden's remarks, and not just the commitment. And some of us have questions, how much of that is new money, how much isn't, but the fact that we've got a president of the United States who is talking about the need to address malnutrition, who mentioned it in his inauguration, gives me great hope. We've got the momentum toward nutrition for growth, and I'm hoping the US is going to have a great high-level presence there. We've got the Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act. And I think one of the things that gives me most hope is that Global Malnutrition Prevention and Treatment Act, which is a mouthful, we should rename it, but it's been endorsed by both Republicans and Democrats. This is one of the most polarized times in our country that I've ever lived through, and this is an issue that draws bipartisan support, and I think that's huge. So that fact in itself gives me such tremendous hope that we're really going to be able to get something done, and that the United States has a key leadership role to play on the global stage.
Excellent. Thank you. You are all three making me feel even more hopeful. Dr. Jim, Dr. Cecilia, Kathy, thank you so much. That's it for our panel, but next up, join me in just a moment here. We'll be watching a video about Nourish the Future. And following the video, we'll hear from Kim Cernak, Managing Director of the Eleanor Crook Foundation. So with that, please watch.
Nutrition, as we all know, is the foundation, the basic fundamental foundation upon which every child's future is built.
In 2020, it's likely that malnutrition killed more people in the world than COVID.
1 out of every 10 people around the world is experiencing complexities and issues of malnutrition. We're going to have about 14 million more children that are going to experience severe acute hunger as a result of the pandemic.
When you see children who are short for their age, that is a symptom of a child that's stunted, that did not receive the micronutrients that they needed in the first 1,000 days. What you can't see is the mental stunting that has occurred in that child.
Malnutrition, hunger, has in many ways been humankind's oldest story. It's been with us since the beginning. But what's happened in virtually an instant in the context of human history is really startling. Despite the fact that malnutrition is the #1 killer of kids and has limited the brain development of 1 in 4 people on Earth, and despite the fact that proven cost-effective solutions are just waiting to be scaled up, the wildest thing is that almost no one's paying attention.
Nourish the Future is a 5-year proposal that could save the lives of 2 million children and improve the lives of 500 million women and children. If we believe in the future, we have to nourish the future, and that means investing in the nutrition for our children.
The legacy the United States could have by stepping up and embracing Nourish the Future is to turn a vicious cycle into a virtuous cycle so that the current generation can survive and thrive and keep on giving through the generations to follow.
Malnutrition and addressing malnutrition, we believe, is solvable. All it takes is the political will to do so. Pushing the administration, pushing Congress to actually put resources to really make an investment in malnutrition.
Ending hunger and malnutrition today is no more audacious a goal than rebuilding the world after World War II was. It's no more audacious a goal than sending a man to the moon was in 1969. And it's no more audacious a goal than ending COVID is today. In fact, I'd argue ending severe malnutrition would probably be relatively easy compared to these other feats.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. As Blythe said, my name is Kim Cernak, and I have the honor of serving as the Managing Director of the Eleanor Crook Foundation. ECF is a US-based private philanthropy, and we're exclusively focused on the fight against global malnutrition. We invest in on-the-ground research that shows us how to effectively end malnutrition, and we invest in advocacy that makes the case for why. It's a particular honor to be part of the Borlaug Dialogue. As I'm sure many of you know, Dr. Borlaug is credited with saving over 1 billion lives through the Green Revolution. It's a remarkable record for an individual, a remarkable record for human history, and it's certainly not coincidentally also the perfect inspiration for today's discussion. At the Eleanor Crook Foundation, we're focused on ensuring that the amazing revolution that he catalyzed continues to spread. that the world drives further improvements in human health and food security, particularly in the most vulnerable corners of the world. Because the truth is, and as you've heard from other panelists, while there has been remarkable progress over past decades, global malnutrition persists as a global emergency. Today, we're experiencing the largest hunger spike in 20 years. And I think it's really important to remind ourselves of this challenge. Even before COVID-19, a child died from malnutrition every 11 seconds. Malnutrition is the #1 killer of kids every year. More kids die from it than from AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined. Millions of other kids survive being malnourished, but face lifelong consequences to their health and to their development. And of course, as you all well know, and as some of the panelists have already mentioned today, COVID-19 now threatens to dramatically increase these already crisis levels of malnutrition around the world. And experts are predicting that pandemic-related disruptions to food systems and to health systems could cause up to a 50% rise in global malnutrition. For millions of people, these predictions are not theoretical. They're playing out in the most vulnerable communities every day, right now. And in the end, malnutrition related to the pandemic is likely to kill more people, especially children, than COVID-19 itself. We also know it doesn't have to be this way. The fact is there are proven and cost-effective solutions that we know work. Things that have been known to work for a long time that can prevent and treat severe malnutrition. Proven solutions like prenatal vitamins, support for breastfeeding mothers, vitamin A supplementation, and therapeutic foods for kids who are malnourished are some of the most cost-effective tools available, and not just in global nutrition, but in global health and development. These essential interventions have extremely low rates of coverage across most low and middle income countries. The power of these interventions is simply not reaching the majority of people who need them. And now, why is that? That's one of the questions we spent a lot of time asking at the Eleanor Cook Foundation. And certainly one of the reasons, a really big reason, is the fact that this global emergency has long been under-championed and underfunded. And if you take the US, for example, today the US invests less than 1% of our international development budget on high-impact nutrition interventions. For an issue that's responsible for 50% of child deaths, that limits the brain power of 1 in 3 people on the planet, our International Development Agency is investing less than 1% of its resources to address the problem. So we understand the problem. We've got many of the tools to fix it. What's missing now is awareness, action, and funding. And that's what ECF, along with many of you, have set out to try to change. And while things are bad, I also think it's really important to remind ourselves that things are definitely not hopeless. At this moment, we at ECF believe that we've been presented with what might be the greatest opportunity in a generation to see action on global malnutrition by the US government. You have heard about some of this from my co-presenters, and Kathy summed it up in the last panel. But just to reiterate, and thanks to the work of Bread for the World and 1,000 Days, the Alliance to End Hunger, and other partners, bipartisan support for global malnutrition programs has probably never been higher. You heard a bit about the Global Malnutrition and Prevention and Treatment Act of 2021, which was recently introduced in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. Just this week, the Senate released an appropriations bill that matches the House of Representatives' proposed level of global nutrition funding, $160 million, which would be the highest ever annual appropriation for funding for global malnutrition. And as others have said, in the White House, we have a president who has championed the fight against global hunger and malnutrition for decades. And like Kathy mentioned, and much to the delight of the team at ECF, the president spoke about the issue on Inauguration Day. And he said, "Ending hunger and malnutrition at home and around the world is consequential. If we do nothing today, food insecurity will loom as an even larger and bigger threat tomorrow. You're fostering a world that is more just and peaceful." For the past few years, the Eleanor Cook Foundation has worked with dozens of partner organizations to help prepare to take advantage of this very moment of the opportunity that I just described. And I know many of you out there, including the organizations hosting this event today, have spent countless hours educating and engaging policymakers. And on our part, the Eleanor Crick Foundation has worked with partners to help spearhead a proposal to the US government, what you just saw the video about how they can revitalize and grow their leadership in the fight against global malnutrition. And as you saw in the video, we're calling that proposal Nourish the Future. It lays out a roadmap for how the US could lead the greatest reduction in child deaths in decades by scaling high impact, cost-effective nutrition interventions in 9 priority countries. And all told, the proposal builds on the existing global health and food security infrastructure at USAID, and it outlines a sharpened focus on scaling some of the most life-saving and cost-effective interventions money can buy. Suffice it to say, Nourish the Future has been years in the making. To get to this point, we underwent a couple years of intense brainstorming and analysis, a process which included dozens of organizations, hundreds of experts. I see many of you on the line, multiple rounds of revision. We learned from experts who are part of past US global health initiatives like PEPFAR and the President's Malaria Initiative. And all of this work has led us to this final proposal, which we think represents the best thinking of our community and which enjoys broad support from leading global health and development organizations and experts. I encourage everybody on the line today to read the full proposal. It's available at endmalnutrition.org. The document itself is nearly 50 pages with a lot of specific detail. So suffice it to say, I will not go through every page now, but just to hit on some highlights. Nourish the Future offers an evidence-based 5-year plan for the US government to save lives and build human capital by scaling up high-impact nutrition interventions in target countries. To develop the proposal, Johns Hopkins led an intensive modeling effort to identify the most cost-effective interventions across USAID priority countries and to project the outcomes of scaling these interventions after 5 years. And we think that the outcomes that they landed on are pretty compelling, which is to say, if implemented, Nourish the Future would save at least 2 million lives. It would be one of the most dramatic global reductions in child deaths since 1990. The plan would considerably improve life for at least 500 million women and children, and it would reduce severe malnutrition in the focus countries by up to 50%. It would set up the United States to lead the next chapter of the child survival revolution, to improve school performance of 18 million children, and to generate a minimum of $56 billion in economic returns. The plan focuses on the 2 most important vehicles for combating malnutrition, which you've heard a bit about today, health systems and food systems. And as you all know, right now, these systems each offer proven solutions to malnutrition, but they operate in extremely siloed ways in most contexts. And so Nourish the Future works to intentionally link these systems towards the common aim of ending malnutrition. Briefly, on the health systems front, we know that there is no one-size-fits-all solution for global malnutrition. And of course, different countries need to prioritize different interventions based on their local and their unique context. But the modeling run by Johns Hopkins that I mentioned identified 4 proven interventions which really stood out in most contexts for their life-saving potential and their cost-effectiveness. And these interventions are what we're now calling the Power 4. I mentioned them earlier. It includes prenatal vitamins, breastfeeding support, vitamin A supplementation, and emergency therapeutic foods for malnourished kids. And these interventions are absolutely critical in the important 1,000 days between the start of a woman's pregnancy and her child's 2nd birthday. And as I said, we know that the causes and consequences of malnutrition are complex and require nuanced and localized approaches. But the evidence also shows that scaling up these 4 interventions through health systems would save a lot of lives. And on the food system side, Nourish the Future proposes ways to accelerate Feed the Future's impact on malnutrition. And thanks to many of you, Feed the Future, the US government's global food security initiative that you just heard about from Jim, has had remarkable success in increasing yields of staple crops and lifting farmers out of poverty. Nourish the Future proposes adding a flexible package of nutrition-focused food interventions that would have a multiplier effect on Feed the Future and its contribution to human health and to nutrition. So this includes a greater focus on nutritious value chains, measures to improve food safety, reduce food loss, more catalytic capital to spur new investments in nutritious food companies, a greater focus on fortification and biofortification, and more tailored support for female farmers. So again, I encourage all of you to visit endmalnutrition.org, where you can read the full proposal. And while you're there, there's an opportunity to sign your name as a supporter of Nourish the Future. We've already got a robust community of experts signed on as supporters, and we're using that to demonstrate and to reinforce to decision makers that there is a large community that believes the moment is now to address global malnutrition. And from ECF's standpoint, getting Nourish the Future the attention that we think it deserves is our #1 advocacy priority and will remain so through the next year. In just the last couple of weeks, we had the opportunity, along with others, to brief USAID Administrator Power and USAID senior leadership on the proposal. We also hosted a major public launch event last week. I see that the link was added to the chat. So if you didn't tune in, I would encourage you to do so. We had incredible support from bipartisan policymakers, celebrities, NGO, and community leaders, with nearly 300 people from 23 countries tuning in to learn more. And we've got additional campaigns and communication and engagement efforts planned for the rest of the year and beyond. Suffice it to say, after spending 2 years developing this proposal, it's our goal to have as many people, especially decision makers, learn about it, understand it, and give it the consideration we think it deserves. We are definitely feeling like we're off to a great start, but we hope that all of you will consider getting involved and supporting this effort from wherever you sit as well. On the day that Dr. Borlaug's Nobel Peace Prize was announced, he was working in a wheat field outside of Mexico City. His wife, Margaret, went out to find him to tell him the good news. And according to one of his biographers, his response was, "Someone's pulling your leg." After she finally convinced him it really was true, Dr. Borlaug kept on working, saying he'd celebrate later. He was also quoted as saying, "I personally cannot live comfortably in the midst of abject hunger and poverty and human misery if I have the possibility of, even in a modest way, with the help of my many scientific colleagues, of doing something about improving the lives of these many young children." I am sure this is a sentiment that resonates with many of you. And Dr. Borlaug drove great progress toward that goal. But today, a child still dies from malnutrition every 11 seconds. How much longer will it be before every parent is simply able to nourish their children? Now, that's the question that drives us at the Eleanor Crick Foundation. That question, along with the very firm belief that the answer could still be within our lifetimes. But we know it's going to be up to us to keep working to make it happen. Thanks for the time today, and we look forward to continuing to work together.